My name is Chris, and welcome back to Space and Story. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about climbing the ladder, promoting, moving up in your level. If you have decided, I guess it's based on if you decided to take your creativity and make it a career for a company. If you're working for yourself, this maybe doesn't apply so much to you, but it still could, I guess. But the idea is that you got into this creative endeavor, design, cooking, dancing, music, photography, videography, whatever it was, because you probably enjoy the art form itself, right? So you wanted to make the art. You wanted to be the person behind the stove, behind the camera, behind the keyboard, computer, behind the drafting table, doing the day-to-day work, because that's the thing that probably got you excited about it. And at some point in your career, you may find the opportunity to get a promotion. Rather than being a cook, maybe you become the head chef. Rather than being a designer, maybe you become a manager or a director. Rather than being, cameraman, photographer, you might become a producer. When that kind of happens, your entire job, what's under your purview changes. What you do on a day-to-day basis is now completely different. And you don't always understand that in the moment. And I think for me, this became really apparent when I was in the culinary field. I've been working for some years. I got a couple opportunities to run the kitchen entirely. So my first opportunity was maybe my first or second job right out of the culinary school. I worked for a company called Premium Cinema, which at the time was one of the first companies doing sort of a movie theater and a restaurant all in one concept. So like my wife was pregnant at the time, my son was on the way, and I was in school and I had to make a decision. Do I finish school, which I wasn't really enjoying at the time? I was learning more on my 9-to-5 job in the kitchen than I was being in culinary school, or drop out of school, go get a job and support my family. So I made the decision to drop out of school. I was getting more value outside of school and I needed the money. I had a baby coming. So, that kind of takes precedence over some things. So the job that I went out and found was at, again, Premium Cinema. And this was really I think the second, location that they've opened. They had one location, I think it was in Chicago. It was, a restaurant. It had one movie theater in it, one screening. So people would come in, they'd eat, they'd go see the movie, and it'd be dead because, nobody's really coming just for the food. They're coming for the food in the movie. But the location we opened, I think, had 3 different theaters in it. So we were struggling with trying to keep up with, there's a constant flow of people. Movies all start at different times. How do you coordinate what time a movie starts? What's the best food to have in a movie theater? If you're in an enclosed space, having a whole bunch of smelly seafood may not be your best option. It tends to be really cold in the movie theater. So having things that can stand up to the temperature in there, things that are easier to eat in the dark, if you're eating in the dark. So there was a lot to kind of consider there. And basically I came in as a fry cook. I was going to work the fryers. That was what I was hired for. But in any situation, you go into a job and you show what you know, right? You show your skill set, you show your leadership, whatever it may be. And I end up working myself into a position where I ended up running the kitchen. And this was more of a startup environment. It was really kind of open and free and everyone was trying to figure things out. So it was a place where it was some opportunity there. I didn't even realize when I walked in the door, but there was opportunity there to move up quickly. So I was able to do that. I think what did I do? I took some time. I wrote a whole new menu. I did all this stuff as a, executive chef. And then when my son was born, I went away and the general manager basically snaked me and took my brand new menu and presented it like it was his. and I ended up fired and I lost my job, and it wasn't a great situation at the end of the day. But I had that transition from being the one who is doing the day-to-day work to one who is doing management and inventory and putting together a menu. With some of that other things that are exciting, like putting together a menu, but doing inventory, HR stuff is not fun. I had other opportunities later in my career, again, to, get out of the kitchen and get to a leadership position and be in charge, do inventory. And that's one of the things I think over time that really led me to think about a career change. Also, there were some health issues at the time as well. I had kidney failure, and that also helped me to kind of, push me in that direction. But I think being in a kitchen and not being able to be involved with the food in the same way, not having a hands-on position, and really having to worry about, is so-and-so going to show up? What's the schedule like? Who'd I have to fill in holes for? We have everything we need to get through the night? Is all the prep done? All these things start weighing on you. I think I was working at Nothing But Noodles at the time, and we were opening a new location, and I got the opportunity to run the kitchen and to be in charge, be the head chef, what have you. And I really was not enjoying it the way that I thought I would. As you come into the industry, you come into any job, the expectations that you want to move ahead and get promoted and get higher up in the company. And I found myself in a position where I was missing the day-to-day of cooking. That's why I got into it. And then once you kind of get to that point in your career, it almost feels crazy to go backwards, right? To go, hey, I don't want to be in charge anymore. I want to just be, an individual contributor rather than a manager. And people look at you kind of crazy if you want to make that decision. So that was something that really weighed on me a lot. I think I went from there and I went to running the school cafeteria, and then, the level of the food was decreasing over time as I was going through my career, and the responsibilities were going up over time. So I'm creating less artistic, less creative food and doing less cooking in general. So those combinations of things really kind of stripped a whole lot of my love for cooking out of me, particularly as a career. You can always go home and, hit the farmer's market, do what you want to do and cook the food that you enjoy and do something, incredible and creative and something that fulfills your passion in your own space and time. But when you start looking at it in your day-to-day career where you thought you were going to be able to do those same things, it gets to be, disheartening when you can't really do those things anymore. And moving up that level, which I thought was this great, accomplishment, really ended up being sort of the bane of my existence at some point and the downfall of my culinary career, because I just didn't want to do it anymore. And that wasn't really what I signed up for. So I always say this to, people who are looking to get promoted in any job, whether it's creative field or not, always kind of look at what are the responsibilities of moving up in that position and what are the things you're going to lose by moving up. Obviously, money is something that you're always looking to gain. An extra title will hopefully bring up more money, put more in your pocket at the end of the day, and more responsibility if that's something you're looking for. But it's also could be, the death wish for the thing that you might love. So I'm in a similar situation now as a UX designer. I have the ability to move from a senior designer up to a principal level, which to me feels more appealing because it's still an individual contributor. It's not necessarily a management role. You're not necessarily getting way out of touch with the work. But we did have a management role open up recently. And, my manager's like, hey, I think there's something you should go and try out for. And I have to ask myself that same question. What is the day-to-day? What am I going to be doing? Am I going to be missing touching the work at the end of the day? And I had to think long and hard about that. And I think, I looked at a lot of options and pros and cons and why I would want to do it. And, money is obviously a big driver of it because I could always use more money, like we all could. But also is this the work I want to be doing? Do I want to be an HR contact for employees? Do I want to be the one who motivates and plans and strategizes and moves people here and moves people there and breaks up the work and figures out who's the best person for the best place. And there's value in all of that. There is intentionality. There is a challenge in all of that. And I think a lot of times as a creative, you might enjoy the challenge of something new. But is that the challenge you signed up for? Is that the challenge you fell in love with? It could be a new challenge that challenges you in a way that you didn't expect and you really actually enjoy. So don't discount that as well. There's always, two sides to the coin. It might take you out of your element to a place you're not ready for and don't want to be, or it could also move you up into a place where you feel like you're in a new place to be creative in a new way. For me, my decision was I think I would stay on the individual contributor route, really because of my past and, kind of losing my excitement about an industry before because of making those moves. And, funny enough, my own manager was having those same similar thoughts, right? So she decided to actually do sort of a lateral move into a more principal type of role. I think it's a fellow level, which is the level above principal, but still sort of an individual contributor, directly touching more of the design work rather than doing less management. So even she was going through a similar, thought process of like, I want to be closer to the work. So she made that decision to actually move from management level, across to a fellow level and was able to kind of make that transition as well. So, I kind of say all these things to say, if, you're in a point in your relationship with your practice, whether you're in a career working for another company, or even if you're working for yourself, right? Like, I think a lot of advice I hear about entrepreneurs is, when you're starting up your new business, like replace yourself first. Whatever you have to do kind of on a day-to-day basis, get someone else to do that. And then you can move on and do something else and, grow the business. So like if you're, for example, a fashion designer, my mother's a fashion designer. So like at some point, the advice to her might be, hey, find someone who can, do the same creative output that you do, who can do the sewing, who can do the designing, who can, mix the colors and the materials and the fabric and, come up with these designs that kind of fit your brand and your style aesthetic. And you can move on and do something else that helps the business grow. But at the end of the day, like, is that the thing you want to do? Do you want to get away from the work? And maybe it's getting away from the work in a small amount, right? So there's the idea of going from, a designer to an art director to a creative director, where you are having an effect on the work at all those levels, but just in a different way, right? So you might be leading the entire direction and strategy behind what we want to produce. And the art director, at a creative director level, and then the art director a step down, it's really coming up with all these different, smaller directions under that, your options. And then a day-to-day designer is going to look at those options and come up with, actual executions on those options. So like moving up a level might actually, still put you close enough to the work where you can have some effect. You may not be doing the, final touches and polishing on whatever that thing is, that output is, that, plate of food, that, logo design or that website design or that photo or video. But you're close enough to the work where you feel like you were part of it, you're in touch with it, and maybe you have a little bit more control at that level, which also might be nice, right? Because sometimes you're in positions where you're like a individual contributor creative who's a little lower down the ladder, and all you're really doing is executing other people's ideas. So moving up might actually allow you to have a little bit more control over the ideas at the end of the day. So that could also be a attractive move up to you. So I say all that to say just to like always give a second thought to what's going on in your career and whether you want to get promoted and move up, and understand like what parts of the process are you in love with? What parts of the process do you not want to lose, right? You want to always kind of keep your hands in, that keeps you down to earth, in touch with what's going on. Because sometimes you accept that promotion and you think it's a big thing moving up, and you find yourself out of touch with the thing that you fell in love with. And that can be really difficult to handle at times, because it may actually, suck out the love for that creativity that you have, that creative expression that you have, that art form, and make it so that art form is a whole lot less appealing to you. And, never be afraid to take a step back if you have to. If you get in a position where you feel like you're out of touch with the work and, there's another position that maybe steps back, maybe it's a little less money, a little less responsibility, but it fits into what feeds your creativity, what feeds your passion, and I hate to say like feeds your soul and your spirit. Like it's a little touchy feeling, but at the end of the day, that's kind of what it's about. What's driving you to want to do this creative outlet? Don't be afraid to take a step back if you have to. And if you have the opportunity to. Not everyone can, take a step back all the time. Sometimes you've moved so far ahead and your life is in a place where you don't have the opportunity to step back financially. So always, think twice about taking that step forward. And that's really what I wanted to get off my chest today. It was something that, I've kind of come across in my life, and I've come across it a couple of times, and I'm, making decisions based on my own experience. So I just wanted to share a little bit of that experience with all of you out there. So this is really, helpful to you. I'd love to hear some feedback on it. Have you, ever had a situation where, that promotion has maybe stripped the love out of something that you, really enjoy? Has it sort of taken you away or taken you out of touch with your creative expression because you've moved up and away from it? So with that, I will see you guys next time. Love talking to you guys as always. Again, this is Space and Story with myself, Chris, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.